But what were these monumental errors? From ancient times to modern warfare, these 15 blunders will leave you questioning how these decisions were ever made. Stay tuned, because number 1 will leave you speechless. Welcome to our channel, the channel where we unravel the most fascinating and shocking events from history. If you're passionate about uncovering the hidden truths behind history's most significant moments, then hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to never miss out on our latest content. Let's jump right in. Military history is filled with tales of heroism, strategy, and victory. But alongside these victories are stories of catastrophic failures, decisions that, in hindsight, seem almost unbelievable. These blunders not only change the outcomes of battles, but reshape the world as we know it. From ancient warfare to modern-day conflicts, the consequences of these errors have been far-reaching, affecting millions of lives and altering the course of history. War is unpredictable. Even the most well-planned strategies can go awry. But what happens when the downfall is due to a blunder? A mistake so significant that it becomes a defining moment of failure. Today, we explore 15 of the most egregious military blunders, from misguided invasions to miscalculations that led to utter disaster. Blunder number 15, the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC. In one of the most devastating defeats in Roman history, the Battle of Cannae serves as a timeless lesson in the dangers of overconfidence. The Roman Republic, at the height of its power, faced off against the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal. Despite having a larger and more powerful army, the Romans fell into a trap that Hannibal had meticulously planned. By allowing the Romans to advance into the center of his forces, Hannibal then encircled them with his cavalry and infantry, creating a perfect pincer movement. The result was a massacre. Over 50,000 Roman soldiers were killed, and the might of Rome was temporarily shattered. This defeat was not just a loss on the battlefield, it sent shockwaves through the Roman Republic, shaking its confidence and forcing it to rethink its military strategies. Blunder number 14, the Charge of the Light Brigade, 1854. The Charge of the Light Brigade is perhaps one of the most famous examples of a military order gone horribly wrong. During the Crimean War, a miscommunication between British commanders led to a catastrophic charge into a valley surrounded by Russian artillery. The Light Brigade, a force of around 600 cavalrymen, bravely charged forward, not realizing they were heading straight into a death trap. As they advanced, they were met with devastating fire from 3 sides, resulting in a horrendous loss of life. The charge, though heroic, was ultimately futile, and its tragic outcome was immortalized in Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem, which speaks to the bravery of the soldiers while also highlighting the sheer folly of the command decisions that led to such needless slaughter. Blunder number 13, Napoleon's invasion of Russia, 1812. Napoleon Bonaparte, at the zenith of his power, made the fatal decision to invade Russia in 1812, leading to one of the most disastrous military campaigns in history. Confident in his previous victories across Europe, Napoleon believed that he could easily subdue Russia. However, he severely underestimated the vastness of the Russian landscape, the harshness of its winter, and the resolve of its people. The Russian strategy of scorched earth, destroying their own lands to deny the French any resources, left Napoleon's grand army stranded and starving as winter set in. The cold and lack of supplies decimated his troops, reducing his once mighty force of over 600,000 men to a mere fraction by the time they retreated. The campaign marked the beginning of the end for Napoleon, as his weakened army could no longer sustain his empire. Blunder number 12, Operation Market Garden, 1944. Operation Market Garden was one of the Allies' most ambitious plans during World War II, but it turned into a devastating failure due to overambition and flawed intelligence. The plan aimed to secure a series of key bridges in the Netherlands, allowing Allied forces to bypass the heavily fortified Siegfried Line and invade Germany. However, the operation was fraught with problems from the start. Paratroopers were dropped too far from their objectives. Unexpected German resistance was far stronger than anticipated, and the final bridge at Arnhem proved impossible to capture. The operation stretched the Allied supply lines to the breaking point, leading to heavy casualties and a delay in the advance into Germany. It was a costly setback that highlighted the dangers of underestimating the enemy and overreaching in military strategy. Blunder number 11, the Battle of Little Bighorn, 1876. The Battle of Little Bighorn, also known as Custer's Last Stand, is a classic case of underestimating one's opponent with disastrous consequences. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, confident in his abilities and dismissive of the Native American forces he was facing, led his men into a trap. Believing that the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors would flee at the sight of his cavalry, Custer divided his forces and launched an attack. Instead of fleeing, the Native American warriors, led by Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, surrounded and overwhelmed Custer's troops. The result was a complete annihilation of Custer and his command, a humiliating defeat for the U.S. Army, and a temporary victory for the Native American tribes resisting U.S. expansion. The battle became a symbol of the broader conflict between the U.S. government and Native American tribes. Blunder number 10. Pearl Harbor, 1941. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, is often cited as one of the most consequential military blunders of the 20th century. While the attack was initially seen as a brilliant success, crippling the U.S. Pacific Fleet and catching the United States off guard, it ultimately backfired in spectacular fashion. The attack galvanized American public opinion, transforming the U.S. from a nation deeply divided over involvement in World War II into one united in its resolve to defeat Japan. Additionally, key American aircraft carriers were not present during the attack, sparing them from destruction and allowing the U.S. to quickly rebuild its naval strength. Japan's failure to anticipate the long-term consequences of the attack led to its eventual defeat as the United States mobilized its vast resources and industrial power to wage a relentless war in the Pacific. Blunder number 9. The Battle of Midway, 1942. The Battle of Midway, fought just 6 months after Pearl Harbor, was a turning point in the Pacific theater of World War II, and a prime example of how intelligence and planning can overturn even the most formidable adversary. The Japanese, riding high on a string of victories, aimed to eliminate the U.S. as a strategic power in the Pacific by luring its carriers into a trap. However, U.S. codebreakers had cracked the Japanese naval codes, allowing Admiral Chester Nimitz to anticipate the attack and prepare an ambush of his own. In the ensuing battle, the Japanese lost 4 of their best aircraft carriers, a blow from which they never fully recovered. The battle showcased how overconfidence and underestimation of the enemy's capabilities can lead to catastrophic losses, shifting the balance of power in the Pacific irrevocably in favor of the Allies. Blunder number 8. The Battle of Stalingrad, 1942 to 1943. The Battle of Stalingrad is often regarded as one of the bloodiest and most brutal confrontations in human history, marking a decisive turning point in World War II. Hitler's obsession with capturing the city that bore Stalin's name led him to commit vast resources and men into a protracted and ultimately futile battle. The German Sixth Army, initially making swift gains, became bogged down in fierce house-to-house fighting as the Soviet defenders refused to yield. As winter set in, the Germans found themselves encircled by a massive Soviet counteroffensive, their supply lines cut off, and their troops freezing and starving. Despite Hitler's orders to hold the city at all costs, the German forces were eventually forced to surrender, with over 90,000 soldiers taken prisoner. The loss at Stalingrad shattered the myth of Nazi invincibility and marked the beginning of the Soviet Union's relentless push westward towards Berlin. Blunder number 7. The Battle of the Somme, 1916. The Battle of the Somme, one of the largest and bloodiest battles of World War I, epitomizes the horrors of trench warfare and the catastrophic human cost of outdated military tactics in the face of modern technology. The British Army, under the command of General Douglas Haig, launched a massive offensive against German positions along the Somme River. However, the preliminary artillery bombardment, intended to destroy the German defenses, failed to achieve its objectives, leaving the barbed wire and machine gun nests largely intact. When British troops advanced across no man's land, they were mowed down in their thousands by German machine guns. On the first day alone, the British suffered over 57,000 casualties, the worst single-day loss in the history of the British Army. The battle dragged on for months, with little strategic gain, symbolizing the futility and slaughter of the Great War. Blunder number 6. The Invasion of Gallipoli, 1915. The Gallipoli campaign was one of the Allies' most audacious and ill-fated operations of World War I, aiming to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war by capturing the Dardanelles Strait. The plan, conceived by Winston Churchill, was bold but deeply flawed, with inadequate intelligence, poor planning, and underestimation of the Ottoman defenses. The amphibious landings at Gallipoli were met with fierce resistance, and the Allied forces, including troops from Australia and New Zealand, quickly became bogged down in a brutal and bloody stalemate. The rugged terrain, combined with the ferocity of the Ottoman defenders, made any progress impossible. After months of heavy fighting, with appalling casualties on both sides, the Allies were forced to evacuate, having gained nothing for their efforts. The campaign was a disaster that tarnished Churchill's reputation and left a lasting legacy of grief and loss, particularly in Australia and New Zealand. Blunder number 5. The Battle of Agincourt, 1415. The Battle of Agincourt is one of the most famous battles of the 100 Years' War, where the English, led by King Henry V, achieved a stunning victory over the French. The French knights, confident in their numerical superiority, charged across a muddy battlefield, only to be decimated by the English longbowmen. The longbow, a weapon with a range and power far beyond that of the French crossbows and lances, allowed the English to inflict massive casualties on the French from a distance. The French, bogged down in the mud and unable to maneuver, were slaughtered in droves as they tried to reach the English lines. The result was a catastrophic loss for the French, with thousands of knights and noblemen killed or captured. The Battle of Agincourt demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of the longbow and the importance of terrain and conditions in medieval warfare. It also highlighted the dangers of overconfidence and the failure to adapt to new technologies and tactics, leaving the French military leadership humiliated and the path open for further English victories in the war. Blunder number 4, the Battle of Kasserine Pass, 1943. The Battle of Kasserine Pass was the first major engagement between American and German forces during World War II, and it revealed significant weaknesses in the U.S. Army's preparedness for the realities of modern warfare. In February 1943, in the rugged mountains of Tunisia, German forces under the command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel launched a surprise attack against the inexperienced and poorly coordinated American troops. The Americans, unfamiliar with the tactics and strategies employed by the seasoned German forces, were quickly overwhelmed. The battle resulted in heavy American casualties and a chaotic retreat, exposing serious deficiencies in leadership, communication, and training. However, the defeat at Kasserine Pass also served as a harsh but invaluable lesson for the U.S. Army. The subsequent reorganization and reinforcement of American forces helped turn the tide in North Africa, leading to future successes against the Axis powers. Blunder number 3. The Fall of Singapore, 1942. The fall of Singapore is often regarded as one of the greatest military defeats in British history, a catastrophic blunder that highlighted the dangers of complacency and underestimation of the enemy. The British, confident in Singapore's status as an impregnable fortress, failed to anticipate a Japanese attack from the north, believing the dense Malayan jungle to be an impenetrable barrier. However, the Japanese, under General Tomoyuki Yamashita, launched a swift and devastating overland invasion, bypassing the British defenses and attacking Singapore from the landward side. Despite having superior numbers, the British forces were unprepared for the speed and ferocity of the Japanese assault. The city's fall in February 1942 resulted in the capture of 80,000 British, Australian, and Indian troops, marking a humiliating defeat for the British Empire and signaling the beginning of Japan's dominance in Southeast Asia. Blunder number 2, the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, 1954. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu was the climactic confrontation of the First Indochina War between the French Union forces and the Viet Minh, and it ended in a disastrous defeat for the French, marking the end of French colonial rule in Indochina. The French, seeking to draw the Viet Minh into a decisive battle, established a heavily fortified base in the valley of Dien Bien Phu. However, they underestimated the determination and resourcefulness of the Viet Minh, led by General Vo Nguyen Giap. The Viet Minh surrounded the French position with tens of thousands of troops and heavy artillery, much of which they had laboriously transported through difficult terrain. Over the course of several weeks, the Viet Minh besieged the French garrison, systematically destroying their defenses and cutting off their supplies. Despite desperate attempts to hold out, the French forces were eventually overrun, leading to their surrender in May 1954. The defeat at Dien Bien Phu was a catastrophic blow to French prestige and directly led to the Geneva Accords, which ended French colonial involvement in Indochina. Blunder number 1, the Maginot Line, 1930s. The Maginot Line, a massive line of fortifications built by France along its border with Germany in the 1930s, stands as one of the most famous examples of a failed defensive strategy. Named after the French Minister of War, André Maginot, the line was intended to protect France from a potential German invasion by forcing any attack to go through heavily fortified positions. However, the French military planners made a critical error. They failed to extend the line along the Ardennes forest, believing it to be impassable for large-scale military operations. When World War II broke out, the Germans, under Adolf Hitler, exploited this weakness by bypassing the Maginot Line entirely and launching a surprise invasion through the Ardennes. The French were caught completely off guard, and the German blitzkrieg rapidly overwhelmed their defenses. The fall of France within weeks of the German invasion in 1940 was a devastating blow to French morale and military strategy, and the Maginot Line became a symbol of misplaced reliance on outdated defensive tactics in the face of modern mobile warfare. These military blunders serve as a stark reminder that even the greatest powers can fall victim to poor decisions. Whether it's a result of overconfidence, miscommunication, or sheer bad luck, these mistakes have had profound consequences on the world stage. If you found this deep dive into history's greatest military blunders fascinating, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might be interested. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more eye-opening content. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.